Hey everybody, welcome to Listen Money Matters. To be good is noble, but to show others how to be good is nobler and no trouble. My name is Thomas and I'm here as always with Andrew. Andrew, how are you this lovely, lovely morning and what are you drinking?
I'm great, and they're like building something outside so the window's closed, and I'm just sweating profusely right now.
Dude, they finally are almost done building the house next to mine. So they're gone are the days of me recording a video and then having to stop for a bulldozer. Start again, stop, and start.
I can't even remember one sentence when I do a video. I don't know how you just kind of do it.
I'm actually changing up the way I do it. So I used to just like make just a very bare bones bullet list and then just ad lib everything. I've been experimenting with actually writing a script and then putting my iPad up next to the camera and saying it. Solely to cut down on recording time. So, and it did work the last time I did.
Dude,
so we're going to see.
This is what you have to do. Since you're a YouTube guy, go to YouTube, search like homemade teleprompter or make your own teleprompter.
Oh.
And there are ridiculous ones with an iPad. And I actually started. I'm like 80% through, which is most of my projects in life, and then I just stopped. But like you would actually, it's pretty sweet because I'm better like writing it out and saying like something thoughtful than just like what I do here.
Yeah, I don't know if you're friends with Caleb Wojcik, but he did a video kind of like unboxing thing of like one you can buy for an iPad. Personally, I know like Hank and John do teleprompters on Crash Course and stuff like that, but you have to be very good to make it look like you're not using one if you are using one. So I like to just take memorize a few lines and then say them approach. And I think it makes me a better presenter for live events as well because I'm like forcing myself to recall things on the fly. So that's just a personal opinion though. I know a lot of people use teleprompters and do well with them.
So maybe on topic, if you were doing something live like a TED Talk, you could have it all written down, and you could be speaking, and then you could just like pause and be like, line.
I feel like
someone show me the teleprompter one more time.
Yeah, you could build that into a talk probably if you're doing a TED Talk. Our guest today did a TEDx talk recently. So we got our friend Adam Carroll back on the show. What is it, that third time you've been on the show?
This is the third time. Actually, I think this is 3.5 because last week didn't really work. So this is reboot.
At what point do we bring you on as third co-host then, huh?
Hey, if that's an open invite, I love to banter with you guys.
I mean, that's kind of like the MO of this show, bring a guest on enough times, he becomes the co-host. So
yeah, seriously, you're the most prolific guest right now. So
there we go.
I love that, man. That's awesome.
Andrew, you didn't tell me what you're drinking though.
I am just drinking water, and I actually meant to ask you guys because it's 10:14 a.m. over here, and I know it's earlier there. But if you guys were down for beer, I was gonna crack one.
Well, I'm drinking milk, so I'm gonna stick with that for a while. But maybe in the next one we record, I will grab a beer. And it's got some pear cider in the fridge, so maybe I'll grab one of those when it becomes time for beer. If you're just that eager, Andrew.
I am always eager to drink. But
anyway, Adam, so you withdrew $10,000 and had your kids play Monopoly with it.
I did.
You did a TEDx talk on it. So explain why you would hand children $10,000.
And are you inviting other people over?
Yes, it's the Carroll family Monopoly night. Come on over, man. Winner takes all. We decided. Well, my kids love to play Monopoly. They're board game and ball game, card game. I mean, they just love games. And when they play Monopoly, they play these marathon games of Monopoly that last for days and days and days. And one Saturday, we were playing this marathon game, and the kids were playing kind of outside the rules of the game. Like they were buying each other out of jail and loaning each other money to buy properties and just kind of generally changing the rules. And I kept saying,
your kids
guys, this
are
is
so
not
awesome to each other. Buying each other out of jail? Like I would pay to keep my sister in jail.
Right? I know. And I was kind of like, what are you guys doing? They said, we just want her on the board with us. And then the whole loaning each other money, I said, guys, you borrow money from the bank, you don't do it. And the whole point of Monopoly, I don't know if you guys know this. Do you know the end goal of Monopoly?
To have make everyone else bankrupt, I think.
To bankrupt every other player. It's not to make the most money or anything. It's to bankrupt everyone else around the board.
Unscrupulous robber barons, the board game.
That's right. and interestingly enough, the lady who created it, her intent was like to teach more of a socialistic society, and then whoever got a hold of it changed the nature of the game Monopoly, and then it was all about
Really?
capitalism and commercialism and stuff like that.
So
Yeah,
they even hid the socialism undertones, and your kids still picked up on it.
they did. Yeah. They're very savvy. So I was playing with them, and I thought, I wonder if the money were real, if they would play differently. And because it's all just paper chips, right? They're just throwing paper money around. And so I told my wife that I was going to pull 10 grand out, and she kind of freaked a little bit at first. And she's like, do not put this on social media. I do not want people to know that we have this kind of cash in our house. And so one Sunday I picked up the cash on Friday, which was kind of a funny story because I went into the credit union where we bank, and I said, and actually I got out $9,990 because, if you pull out 10 grand, it's flagged. And so I pulled out $9,990 and said, I need all of these denominations of bills. And it was basically all the ones you would find on a Monopoly board with the exception of the $500 bill.
Yeah.
And they were like, what? All of a sudden there's 5 tellers around this window. And they're like, what are you doing with this money?
Were you like sweating when you were asking them?
You kind of like look over your shoulder like, I hope no one's in here that's sketchy at all. But they said, so what are you doing with this money? And I was like, it's fine. We're going to Prairie Meadows, which is a horse racetrack, like a gaming casino type place. And then I told them what I was doing. Yeah. So I did. I told them what I was doing, and they were like, we want to know how it turned out. And so it was fun. So Sunday we played the game, and it did change the way they played. So it was an amazing experiment.
Now, question: were they playing for the 10,000, or was there like some sort of token prize up for grabs, or was it no prize at all?
Well, so at the beginning, my boys, my youngest especially, who's he's kind of the most money hungry of all 3 of them. Like this is the kid at 4 and 5 years old. If there was change or money sitting on my bedside table or a dresser, he'd walk in and he'd go, "Oh, it's my lucky day," and he would like push those off into his hand and go put it in his bank. So he asked if they were going to keep it all, and I said no, but I will give you guys a prize at the end. So the winner got $20, second place got 15, and third place got 10. So they did get some money out of it, and that I think candidly that helped change some of their decisions.
All right, so I'm interested to know how did they at least stop breaking the rules, or did they become like much more cutthroat? How did this work?
Yeah, so this is a good question. So each of them has a money personality when they play Monopoly. So my daughter plays entirely for chance and community chess cards. That's all she cares about because she knows like she's going to get that one card where everyone has to pay her $100 per property or whatever. And my middle son is a very strategic player who buys all of the railroads, all of the utilities. And then he'll buy, Boardwalk and Park Place and try and get people to land on it and then, bankrupt them that way. Normally.
I was about to say he plays like me until he said Boardwalk and Park Place.
Yeah. Well, so this is what changed. And then my youngest one buys everything he lands on with no exception. So if he has the money, he's buying it. And he's usually cash poor, halfway through, and then he's cash rich at the end. So what changed was my daughter still played for chance and community chess. She really did not change her mode of play whatsoever. Okay. My middle son, he still bought the utilities and he still bought the railroads, but instead of Boardwalk and Park Place, he bought what did he buy? Oriental and Baltic Avenues, which are right after Pass and Go, right? And he put hotels on them right away, didn't even bother putting houses. And he bankrupted everyone on those 2 properties because people kept landing on him and they were paying him $800 a crack. And I asked him, I said, so Nolan, why did you buy those properties? And he looked at me, he's like, Dad, they're just more affordable. So
When's your like teach your kids about finance book coming out?
Well, you know what's funny about that, Andrew, is people have been asking me, so this is a book, right? You have to put this in a book. And I think what I want to do is I want to create the foolproof or fail-proof allowance method. And it's kind of all about money savvy kids and how do you raise money savvy kids? Because I think mine are, head and shoulders above probably most adults right now in terms of what they know. But it's all about some of the choices we give them and really giving them money decisions to make. And that was the whole point of the TED Talk, right? Was that money today isn't real. And kids they're picking up on everything that we do with money. So when they're at the grocery store and they see us swipe a credit card, they don't, many of them don't equate that we're spending money. They just, if you want to buy something, you just have to have a card.
Adam, you just answered this question I had over the weekend. So this past weekend, and obviously this will go live later, it was Father's Day. And I was hanging out at Laura's parents' house, and her sister-in-law's parents were there. And I was talking to him, and he was like, he paid for he has 3 daughters. He paid for their college, basically gave them a good education, but, like, he's not going to leave them money when he dies. And, like, he's like, I gave them the right tools to succeed, which was far better than my parents did for me, so I succeeded, because he gave them more than he got. And I said... Well, I asked him, I'm like, well, so you paid for their education, right? You line them up to succeed. Now, like, how can they do better than that? Like, or is like now they can just never do better for their kids?
Right.
And he was like, well, that's their problem. And he was like, whatever. And I was like, well, damn, like, what can I do better for my kids other than that? And I think you kind of like landed on it where it's, you pay for college, but that's all the way at like 18. And it's just like little lessons up and until that point that build these awesome people. And I think
totally.
We
went, it's a great story or a good point, because we were in Minnesota last week, and we went to a Twins game and went to the Mall of America and the Water Park of America and just had a good 2 or 3 days up there. And we gave our kids $50 each, and it was part of their allowance, part of some jobs they had done at home, but we had given them a little bit and said, all right, this is for you guys, but you guys are going to buy everything. We'll buy your meals, but anything you want. If you want to do activities at the mall, you want to buy stuff at the game, you want snacks at the game, that's all on you. And they knew they had that amount of money. And we went with another family, and their kids are probably like 8, somewhere around 8, 12, and 14. And the entire time it was, Dad, will you get me this? Dad, I want this. Can I get this? Mom, can I have money for this? And the parents were like, this is oppressive. How come your kids aren't doing it? And I said, we gave them money. The decision is theirs. So instead of dropping, 70 to 80 or $100 a kid, which I'm sure they did, it's like the kids knew exactly what their limit was, and there was things they could buy and things they couldn't.
That's brilliant. And knowing your kids, they all came back with $100, right?
they each, right. Double down, right? They're betting in the back window or something. So they each came back with at least 15, and I think my one son had like $22 left because he was telling his siblings, like, if we pool our money, we can buy this snack and then we'll just share it and stuff like that. So they get smart. They get creative and
I do hope your kids did the what is it, like the ropes course like thing.
They did at the Mall of America.
Yes,
it was. They loved it.
Like the most worth the money thing to do there. It's so much fun.
So Andrew, it's $12.99 or $13.99 or something like that. But it's this 3-story ropes course where you're harnessed in, and the kids just get to traverse this major obstacle course.
Do adults get to do it too, or?
Yeah, I've done it.
Yeah.
I think it's called the Ghostly Gangplank or something. It's like SpongeBob themed. It's just like this 3-story, almost like skeleton of a building because it's like made of steel beams. But then there's all this ropes course things, and at the top, I don't know if you've ever played Assassin's Creed, but there's like a plank just sticking out, and you can stand on it, and it just like it looks like it does in the game, where you're just like on top of the minarets in in Istanbul or something, just looking over the whole city. That's really cool.
So when you're up there though, is it very challenging, or are you just kind of doing it? It's like kind of cool because you're up there. Like, is there any endurance type? Like you have to hold on to a rope. You can make it as challenging as you want, because I don't know if you've ever done a ropes course before, but this one has several different routes, and some of like the balancing
on the specific obstacles is very difficult if you don't hang on to the handholds. So it's not going to be like a super crazy workout, but
I did do one, and there was like, 3 levels of challenging, whatever. So me and my sister, we do like the most challenging, and it was like really tough. Like I found out I have like basically no upper body strength. And so these like there was like this group of like people who were like on some work retreat. They went on it as well. And like this one guy, like he was just like kind of overweight. He had like clearly much less upper body strength than me. He got stuck up there, and they had to get a ladder to kind of.
Oh,
it's kind of funny.
We did one at Camp Nerd Fitness as well.
Person.
We did one at Camp Nerd Fitness, and it was very tough. And it was actually required that you did it with a team. Like it wouldn't have been possible without teamwork, and it was a lot of fun too. But yeah, I loved it. There was one in St. Louis that I've been meaning to do, so maybe I'll get down there this summer and do it. But yeah, the question I had, because in the TED Talk, you mentioned that you had met a guy who I think he was like 20 years old, and you said his parents were from like Honduras
Cuba.
Or something. Cuba, that's right.
Cuba. Yep.
And so they said like when he was like 15 years old, we're going to pay for your meals, we're going to pay for, the roof over your head, and that's basically it. And then like you get $50 a week. So, and I mean, you said he was doing really well, right?
Yeah, this is a kid. So I was at a speaking event presenting at a college. This kid came up to me afterwards and he said, "My name is Jose. I'm from, my parents were born in Cuba. And when I was 13, they told me that it's all on me." And I said, "What do you mean it was all on you?" And he said, "They would give me food, shelter, and $50. I think it was $50 a month. I don't even think it was a week. It was $50 a month. And he had to buy his own toiletries. He had to buy school clothes, school supplies. I mean, literally anything that he wanted. If he wanted to go out with friends or whatever, it was all on him. So he ended up getting a job, which was kind of, that's what they do, right? And
yeah.
So he got a part-time job. He started managing his money. And I said, "Well, what was it like?" And he goes, "Oh, I hated my parents. I hated my parents for a year because I thought it was so unfair that they were making me do that when all my other friends, their parents are buying them stuff." And then he said, "I realized about the time I was 16, it was the smartest thing they could have ever done." And I said, "Well, why do you say that?" He goes, "Because all of my friends were buying Abercrombie and Fitch jeans, and I was going to, Goodwill and buying them for $250, and I looked exactly like them. They just spent, way, way more than I did." And he said, "I learned the value of a dollar." And by the time I met him, he was 20. He had $20,000 saved in a money market account. He was on a full ride scholarship to college because he had just, worked really hard about getting scholarships for school. And I maintain that it was all about the fact that it was his responsibility, right? And as much as parents, and Andrew, your story rings true here, as much as parents want to give their kids everything they didn't have, I also think that you give your kids so much that they no longer know how to survive on their own. And that's part of the problem. Now, some people, I've gotten feedback on the TED Talk on YouTube. Some people will say, "Well, a 7-year-old's not a 20-year-old, and you can't make comparisons on that." And while that's true, you'd be amazed what my 7-year-old understands when it comes to money because we have the conversation.
Yeah.
And I'm amazed sometimes what 20-year-olds don't understand because they've never had the conversation.
Yeah, I often wonder if our perceptions of what kids can understand and what kids do understand is a product of, our expectations in the first place. We don't expose them to certain things early enough. So, yeah, I think that kids can understand a lot more about money than we give them credit for.
Totally.
So my question is, how close to Jose's sort of like parents' method are you planning on implementing with your kids? Like, what's the ideal amount of money responsibility for a kid in your mind?
It's funny you ask because I told my daughter, when I was rehearsing the TED Talk, she listened to me a couple times and gave me some pretty valuable feedback on it. And she said, "Dad, are you going to do that to me?" And I said, "Potentially." I said, "Yeah, potentially, but I'll let you know, and we'll ramp up for it, and I'll give you an idea what's to come." And she's like, "Okay, so am I going to have to buy my own shampoo and stuff?" And I said, "Well, we'll talk about how that all works, because it's like." My wife said, "I don't know that I want to have to take him to the store every time." And I said, "Well, we'll figure out how we do that." But it's more about here's your budget. How are you going to stay within your budget? Right.
Yeah.
And that lesson needs to be learned before they leave the house and they're 18 and get a credit card. And they've been told, don't get a credit card over and over again. And then the first time a credit card company's like, no, here's $1,000. It's yours. And they go ape shit with it. That's part of the problem.
Yeah.
So I think, to answer your question, Thomas, I think we will use it, and it will be to varying degrees. But I'm going to create a pretty comprehensive system, I think, and make it available on my site too, because I think parents need to know this stuff.
I think the stuff you're doing is super cool, and you're like really creative with what you're doing. And I'm just curious, like, did you just kind of like pull this out of air? Did your parents kind of do similar but maybe less extreme things with you? Like, what set you up to kind of parent like this? I think it's very aspirational for a lot of people.
I appreciate that. My dad was a big one for giving us a set amount of money and just saying it's yours to deal with. So that, we kind of borrowed from him. And other than that, my parents, I thought we were wealthy. I thought we were really affluent growing up. And my dad kind of laughs about that now and said, the reason we got a Christmas bonus was to pay off our huge credit card at the end of the year. And he's my dad's a very abundant guy. So he lives in abundance all the time and knows that it's right around the corner. And it served him well. But I would say that my wife and I are definitely a joint team in this, in that we are certainly more frugal together than I would be apart, because I tend to be a spender, but she's more of an accumulator. And so it's nice having her energy, in the house, because it's like, oh, we don't need to spend money on that. And as an example, she brought sandwiches on this trip. And whenever we go on vacation, I always think, it's no big deal. Let's just we'll just eat out. But then I look at friends of ours, and it's like they just dropped $50 on a pizza, 2 pizzas and sodas. Yeah. And my kids are perfectly fine eating Pringles and peanut butter sandwiches. So I think at some point, and we take, like we're taking a pretty lavish vacation at the end of this year, and it will be no sandwiches allowed on this trip. So we splurge and we have fun times, but we also do it somewhat strategically, and I think our kids are picking up on that. So I would say I'm somewhat of a byproduct of my growing up and also of my wife's influence.
That's cool. Yeah, I actually did a lot of peanut butter sandwiches in Japan, because we were there for like the first week, and I realized, like, we're eating out 3 times a day. That's expensive.
Yeah.
Or I can just pop down at the convenience store. A bag of bread's like $1. Peanut butter lasts forever, and that's like $4. And that's all I need. Get some of those big carrots, and we're good to go. So like breakfast was that every day then.
So,
dude, when we sold books, I sold books door to door during the summers in college, and we would remit money back to the company. It is a tough job, but they told us that books equal money. So if you sell books, it equals money, and that you keep your expenses low to have a big check at the end. And so what we would do is we would eat, PB&J every day on the road. And even when you're going up to houses, it was like, would you have something small I might be able to take with me to drink? And you're like suggesting that they have a can of pop or something that you can have, But it was great because we figured out how to live on the cheap. And so peanut butter sandwiches, man, it's the way to go.
It's the way to do it.
Laura and I are like in maybe like slightly advanced conversations about having kids. We've held off for a very long time, and the one thing my parents included keep saying to us is that kids are really expensive. I think they're like trying to beat us down with like, kids are really expensive. Like, I don't know, kids are really expensive. Do you think like with this approach, like, do you feel like your kids are maybe not as expensive because they're kind of not like they're like working for you, like, child labor, but they're keeping their own expenses down and they want it like that?
I think there's something to that. And it certainly, it comes at a different age, right? I mean, kids are expensive 0 to 5 because of daycare and food and, all that kind of stuff. Diapers are nuts. It's when they get nuts. Like when my kids are all beyond 5 or 6, right? I've got a 8, 10 and 12-year-old. They are really respectful about not spending a lot of money. I mean, my kids are not wanting kids. And I think there's a difference in the families that they sort of set the precedent. Every time you go into Target, you're going to get a toy. And I've met those people, and they have just shitloads of toys all over their house, but the kids never play with them. Yeah. My kids have like a handful of toys they love, but they would just as soon be outside shooting hoops on a basketball hoop, or they just as soon be outside, filling up water balloons and throwing them at each other. So I think you set a precedent as a parent as to how much you're going to spend and what you're going to spend on. And we say things like, guys, how much enjoyment are you really going to get out of that? Because I don't think you ought to invest your money in something that you're going to use once. And now they're kind of like, yeah, I'd probably use that 2 or 3 times and I'd never use it again. Mm-hmm. So they're more savvy about that. And I think as a result, they're cheaper for us.
So you could, from a completely selfish perspective, be like, I want to retire early, so I'm going to implement this. And then your kids actually grow up and they're financially savvy, which is like pretty sweet. Most of us didn't get that.
And then they don't have to pay for dad's retirement.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah, then they don't have to pay for you.
Worry about, taking care of me in an old folks home or whatever. They know, and we're very clear about this and open with them about the fact that we're paying off our house early. And we're literally like months away from having our house completely paid off. And at that point, the goal was, all of our other friends are putting money in 529 plans and 401k plans and whatnot. And we have retirement accounts. But we said, if we buckle down for 3 years or 4 years, could we pay off a $350,000 home? And so we're months away from doing that. After you do that, well, now you've got equity in the home to buy rental properties. You've got equity in the home if you want to pay for college. There's very little expenses every month. So, if I do one speaking gig, we're covered for the month. So it's like all of the pressure is off, and I get to spend time with my kids, which is what most of the dads around me who, live in expensive homes, and this is probably their one home. They then have a lake home and maybe another home, and they all have SUVs and, Mercedes and Lexus payments in the driveway. But they don't get to spend time with their kids. And so I think what I'm doing is trying to model the behavior for my kids, that if you do for a few years what most people won't do, you can do for the rest of your life what most people can't do.
I like that. Can you submit that as a catchphrase?
Yeah, man.
And the whole like having abundance of stuff and not playing with those toys, like you said, I think about that a lot, because I don't know, Andrew, you probably can like identify with this. I've got a zillion games in my Steam library, and I've got all these video games, and I don't play them.
You play 2 of them.
Yeah. But when I was a kid, I had like 4 PlayStation games, and I played them a ton, Or I'd go out and ride my bike, because like I just had a bike and a basketball, and that's basically it. And, and now I can afford to buy basically any game or whatever, and I just spend it working, or not using the things I bought. So it makes sense to just make do with what you got, I guess.
I've heard something similar said. It's like called the paradox of affluence or something like that. And it's that when you have the means to get all this stuff, and you can and do, then it changes your life, and it changes your life, sometimes making it more complicated, not less complicated. So we think, if I have more money, all my problems would be solved. Well, if you have more money, you might have more problems because you've acquired more stuff. Like, again, taking nothing against folks who have boats or second homes, but I think, good God, I don't like keeping up one home. I can't imagine cleaning and picking up and having extra sets of dishes and all that stuff. And then the boat, they say the 2 best days in your life are the day you buy a boat and the day you sell it. So I just as soon go rent a boat for a day, or, go for a week somewhere and do it, as opposed to make sure I have to have that going on. Yeah. It's really more than anything, and it's not a judgment call on anybody else, but it's about simplicity. How simple do you want to live? And the more simple you live, the more simple your life is.
Yep. Yeah, I like going on boats, but I can't imagine having to, I don't know, you got to buy the trailer, then you got to buy a truck, basically. And then you have to learn how to back a boat into the water and all that. It's just, I'd rather let somebody's dad do it.
Yeah.
I totally vibe with that whole simplicity thing. And it kind of like, so someone had asked on Quora like why Mark Zuckerberg always wears like the same like stupid shirt or hoodie or whatever, and like, you know, some people are like, well, he's trying to like be like Steve Jobs and he's trying to, you know, make a thing, you know, be cool, and he kind of just said that he's trying to remove decisions that he has to make in his life so he has more willpower to make the decisions that are more important. And I think it's the same with money, where like I would love, actually, you know, Laura would really love too if we had a car, because we'd visit our parents more. It'd be easy, cut travel like in half, but then we have to deal with the payment, and then we have to make sure the gas tank is full, and then the car insurance, and it's just every like little decision you make, I think, kind of snowballs.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it does. And I found like when you have a lot of stuff, there are these like moments of respite from all of it and all your work and everything. But in that moment, it's really easy to think that getting something else will make you happy. Like, oh, I got some time to relax. Now I can go get that thing I've been wanting, or I can go get the new game and play it. And then you just added a new thing to your life. And once that little moment is over, it's just like an extra complication, an extra source of stress.
So, Adam, you're teaching your kids all these things, which I think is awesome. And obviously, you know, you could say like financial education is important for the sake of financial education, but like, to what ends, and like, what's the goal, and like, how would you know that you succeeded? Right? Because it's cool that they're doing stuff like, you know, not begging you for money at the theme park and whatever, but what does that translate to, so you know that like this was worth, like the juice was worth the squeeze?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. You know, my core value, one of my core values, actually two of my core values, are freedom and flexibility. And I feel like the decisions we make with them, whether I'm sort of infusing those values in them or letting them see that that's what I value, and I think I do model that for them. You know, what I would like to see, if I know it's successful, is I'd like to see them make all sorts of really good, solid choices about their life that pursue freedom and flexibility, or at least pursue choice and opportunity and options. And I think ultimately that's what I want. That's what I want for the next generation, is I want them to have options and opportunity, not be held down by debt. And so, you know, we've talked about before the documentary that's coming out that we've been working on for the past year, called Broke, Busted, and Disgusted. And that has a similar message. It's like, you can have everything you want, but you got to do it consciously, because you can't just go borrow 80 grand to go to school and then think that, you know, your dream job is waiting for you on the other side. Right. So, you know, I'm hoping that my kids are getting the message of, if you're smart with money, it gives you lots of choices and gives you lots of options. And I think the other one is, I read one time that it takes 2 generations to create a Rockefeller type fortune. And I believe that I am generation 1 and my kids are generation 2. And so what I'm hoping to do is, you know, build a really massive net worth throughout my life that passes on to future generations, but that creates endowments and scholarship opportunities, and hopefully business, you know, an ongoing business that my kids can step into. And I think that will be a sign of success. I'm not there yet, obviously, but we're building the foundation to do that, because I'm not generation 2 in my family. I mean, my parents did very well, and they built a nice retirement nest egg, but I think they'll be around for a long time, and I would guess they'll probably deplete most of it by the time they're gone. Same thing with my wife's parents. So I want to be the start of the Carroll fortune, right? That funds libraries and scholarship programs and whatever else down the road.
That's fucking awesome.
Yeah, it's actually like a much more ambitious goal than just like retiring early or something.
Yeah.
I think we have some
it's a big,
do.
And it drives me, you know, I mean, I think about that, bless you, all the time. And I make decisions based on not what will my life be 20 years from now, but what might my great grandchildren look like, you know, 90 years from now, and how well off might they be. And I look at John D. Rockefeller and what he did with his kids, in the sense that this is one of the wealthiest families that's ever existed. And from the time his kids were young, like 5 or 6 years old, he gave them a quarter a week allowance and a double entry bookkeeping journal. And they had to account for every penny they spent, saved, invested, and gave away. And if they couldn't account for every penny, then they wouldn't get the quarter the next week. And this is a family that has not diminished their wealth over the years, but has actually grown it. And they've grown it because of what they've taught or what they've been taught by previous generations.
Yeah. Well, if the kid discussion, ever happens for you or me, I think that'll be the way to go with it.
Go to you for guidance.
Yeah. My kids are going to get a quarter a week.
So
there you go. Yeah, yeah,
Inflation's no matter.
For like more than a year now, and it's awesome that clearly we could see your success because we talked to you, whatever. But like you start a project and like you're still working on it, so you haven't given up on the shit you're working on, which is awesome. So when you first came on and we first met you, you like introduced Broke, Busted, and Disgusted as this project. You were like just starting because you're like fucking crazy and you want to like do weird shit, and you're still working on it. It's almost done. Can you kind of like catch us up?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've had a long kind of drawn out road on this project, and it probably candidly should have been done 6 months ago. But there's three of us that were working on the project, and my two editors, they both have other gigs or other jobs that they're working on. They're both independents, but one of them was doing a micro documentary for Kansas City Public Television, and the other one has a number of projects going. And so it was finally we got to a point where I just said, guys, it is time to fish or cut bait. We have to get this done. And this is my next 2-year project. I mean, I will go out and I will hit the road with this film, and we'll show it in high schools and colleges, and we're going to send it out to, the public television stations. And our intent is to get distribution through Netflix and Amazon Prime and iTunes and all of that. The film itself will be somewhere between 45 and 55 minutes. So we're probably going to have two versions. The 45-minute version will be released for the high school market, and the intent is to do a 45-minute assembly with 15 or 20 minutes Q&A after. And then the 55, or it's actually 56:45 is what the length has to be for public television. We'll release that to public television partner stations, ideally with a sponsor on the back end that will help us underwrite the whole thing. And the film is amazing, guys. I mean, we showed a 17-minute preview version on sometime in May. It was like May 5th at the Iowa Financial Literacy Summit, which was put on by the governor's office and the Department of Education. And it did exactly what we wanted it to do. And that was everyone in the audience was talking about debt and money and how to borrow for school after it was over. And I realized after we showed it, it was like, well, this is exactly what we wanted, right? We want people to start talking about the fact that it's ridiculous that kids, and I mean kids, 20-year-olds,
not old enough to make decisions of this magnitude.
And that's the deal. We have this great quote. This one professor said, at 17 years and 364 days, many of these kids have barely even done a load of their own laundry. And that at 18, we expect them to make a $100,000 decision. It's asinine.
Yeah.
And we give them that power with this kind of carte blanche mentality of, well, do you need it? Here it is. And so they take it. And, going back to your original question, Andrew, about how do I know if I've been successful? I think my kids will make far different choices in college than their friends will because of what we've taught them along the way. And they won't come out with debt. They'll probably come out money ahead. And so that will be a huge win for me. But as far as the film goes, we're literally in the last phases of post-production. So we're doing the last voiceover, segues. We are doing some motion graphic work, which one of my partners, Calvin Johansson, is just a dynamo at doing motion graphics work. And then we'll do color correction and audio sweetening, and we'll have it ready for release. So, like when I say we're almost done, we are literally almost to the finish line, and nice. I am just jacked about getting it out.
Yeah, I'm pretty stoked to see it.
It's really good. Everyone that I've shown it to, I don't know what they expect. Like if they thought we were shooting on an iPhone or something, but it's a lot of it's beautifully shot. The audio sounds amazing. The stories are phenomenal. We have a woman on the film who has $298,000 in student loans, and she has her dream job, and She's a veterinarian.
Okay.
And she said, I love what I do. I don't, hopefully she said, I don't feel bad about my education, but the debt is something that drags on me every day. So she leaves her dream job and then she drives to Target and she works at Target like 25 hours a week. Wow. And that's just to make ends meet.
Yeah,
man. So not to like super take it down, because that is pretty sucky, but I'm really excited for you that this is almost a thing, because I remember when we saw, I think you had like a promo trailer and just like some clips, and we saw this a year ago, and we'll put it in the show notes. I just think the education that will come from this is going to be phenomenal, and it is clearly the biggest like financial problem of our time. It's well over $1 trillion in, I want to say, like broken dreams,
It's unbelievable. I mean, the numbers continue to get worse, guys. We have, it's now 1.3 trillion in student loans in America. About 700 billion of that is not being repaid right now. It's in forbearance or deferment, or the students are still in school. But of the 600 million that's in repayment, 1 in 3 loans are delinquent, so they're beyond 30 or 60 days late, and 1 in 5 are in default. And to be in default in student loans, it has to be over 170 days late. So it's just, it's really, really, it's bad.
So maybe I don't understand like the whole student loan piece, but for it to be in default, and I'm guessing like a lot of this is public loans, like from the government and stuff.
Right.
That means you like have to like not have a job or something, because they will garnish your pay, right?
They will garnish your pay. They will take your tax returns. I mean, there's no way to get around paying student loans at this point if they're government, if it's a direct loan from the government. And technically the government guarantees every loan out there, even the private ones. So think about this. The three of us should go into business doling out student loans because we know that there's a guaranteed return no matter what. And if Andrew, you and I loan Thomas money and Thomas decides not to pay, we can not only charge him extra interest and penalties for not paying, but we can sell that loan to a collection company that we also own that charges exorbitant collection fees as well, right? And we get to write the first loan off as bad debt and make money, a lot of money, on the collection of the bad debt over time. And that's exactly what's going on. And so it is such a convoluted system that that bankers and big business and Wall Street has figured out how to kind of milk students. I hate to put it that way, but that's what's going on.
It's terrible.
Yeah. We have this great quote from a guy in Wisconsin, and he said, there are 5 crimes in America that have no statute of limitations. And then he proceeds to list them off. And it's like kidnapping, war crimes, treason. And he said, first-degree murder. He said, we essentially treat student loans the exact same way.
Yeah, basically. I mean, the only way to get out of them is if you're like really and truly destitute, basically living in a box. Otherwise, you can't even do bankruptcy.
Right.
But yeah. This is definitely a topic for another episode, but once the movie launches, let us know and we'll tell people about it. And then that might be a good time for you to be on my podcast as well once that movie comes out.
Yeah, that would be great, Thomas. I'm pumped. We're going to reach out to the whole podcasting community to help drive this message, because we think what we're doing, it's not about making money. You certainly don't make documentaries to make money. But it is about changing millions of families' lives who won't have the debt burden because they're just going to do it better, And I think that's the key. You just have to make better choices and decisions about college today. It's a business decision, and we've got to treat it that way.
Definitely. All right, guys. So, any other last questions before we wrap up here?
I think that's pretty solid. Well, and we'll have to just save them for next time because we'll have them on again, of course. I mean, if you will.
Of course.
I am so down for a 4-peat, right? This is the 3-peat. I'm ready for the 4-peat.
And also, let's get Adam's TEDx talk in the show notes as well.
Absolutely.
So that'll be like also a description of the Monopoly game and basically just the value of real money. So, hey guys, if you've got questions about any of the topics we talked about today or something else money related, we are at listenmoneymatters@gmail.com. You can email your questions over there. You can also subscribe and rate the podcast on iTunes or Stitcher, wherever you listen. That really helps. Andrew, I'm guessing like when reviews come in, you see a spike in the analytics and listen numbers, right?
Yeah, so reviews, they don't do like so much for ranking. They help us. It's like new and noteworthy is like a lottery. And every review that's, I think, above a 3, and there's like a few other things, like kind of like tickets for the lottery to get in there.
Okay.
What really pushes us up in the rankings is subscriptions. So when people subscribe, we get like a big link, and tons of people come in. Like that's when we shoot up to like number 3 or something. Nice.
So cool. Yeah. So if you haven't subscribed on iTunes or Stitcher, I use Pocket Casts, I think. Yeah. So that's also another one. Yeah. Then get subscribed, and if you want to write a review,
iTunes or an Apple computer, we would really appreciate it if you would go out and buy an Apple computer and subscribe, because it just helps the show. And
make sure you use a high-interest credit card to do this.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, but seriously, so today's review comes from somebody named Live at Pompeii from the United States. So they're not actually from Pompeii, apparently. They said, this podcast came at a perfect time for me. I've been a professional poker player for almost 6 years, and I'm about to transition into the real world with a sizable resume gap. You can't put poker player on your resume?
I know,
There's got to be some like skills there.
You'd be a great salesman for a high...
No doubt.
Maybe this is Chris Moneymaker writing to us. I have a very solid amount of savings, and thanks to this show and Betterment, but nonetheless, this transition poses many opportunities to make financial errors, and this podcast has given me perspective to tackle all of this logically. I could not recommend it more for anyone who would like to become more financially savvy without feeling the urge to nap while listening. Hopefully people aren't napping while listening to this.
I nap while I listen.
For you?
Yeah.
This is what you put on to go to sleep
10
at
minutes
night.
ago.
Yeah, sometimes when I can't sleep, I just listen to this podcast, and
I fall asleep to the sound of my own voice. Cool, guys. Well, you can find our favorite money resources and apps and books and things over at listenmoneymatters.com/toolbox. That's all we got. So thanks for hanging out with us. Thanks for coming on the show, Adam. And we will
pleasure.
see you guys in the next episode.
later, guys.
Later.
Please tell your friends about this show.